Hey guys, David here, coming at you from Tucson in Arizona, where I'm here for the worldwide launch of the brand new and completely redesigned SRAM Red eTap AXS group set. So it's all new for 2019. In this video, I'll give you all the tech details, everything you need to know about this new group set, and I'll also chat to some of the engineers responsible for bringing this new group set to market. So keep watching to find out everything you need to know. The first thing to talk about is the fact that eTap is now 12 speed. That's no big surprise. We've seen spy shots from early season training camps showing this new group set in use. So it makes the leap from 11 speed to 12 speed, the same as Campag with its record group set that I tested last year. But that's not really the big story here. There's a lot more going on with this group set than just the extra sprocket. Beside me are two bikes which demonstrate the evolution of the new eTap group set. With a specialised tarmac SL6 equipped with a conventional 2x setup with disc brakes, and on my left a gravel all-road bike equipped with a 1x red group set. So the same group set essentially, but two very different flavours to meet the growing demands and the changing styles of riding, with a pure race bike and a bike that can go everywhere and handle this sort of gravel that I'm filming on right now. In developing the new group set, SRAM says it looked at the way the sport is evolving, the way riding standards are improving and bikes are changing, endurance bikes and gravel bikes, and there's just much more choice with how you ride a bike and where you ride a bike. And it reckons this new group set in its many configurations meets this change. You have a choice of 1x or 2x with rim or disc brakes, and this new specialised tarmac SL6 is a really good example of where road race and fast performance bikes are going, with hydraulic disc brakes, a 2x setup with electronic gears. A really good example and a really nice riding bike. I've been riding this bike, it has my name on it, and I'll tell you all about it in a bit. Every part of the group set is brand new. The chips and the motors are faster and more accurate, and they now support Bluetooth and ANT+. Power measurement is now integrated into the crankset to make it a complete part of the system and make power training more accessible. But it's a radical new approach to ratios, aimed at providing a wider range than current group set options and meet the needs of both pro racers and enthusiast cyclists and everyone in between. So now you have a 1x option as well as the previous 2x with a choice of rim or disc brakes. There's just one rear mech for all the configurations, so the same rear mech for 1x and 2x. And inside there's a really neat fluid damper which basically provides increased chain tension, and it keeps the shape and the size and the style of the rear mech nice and compact and keeps the weight low as well. The other key thing to talk about is AXS. So to give the group set its full name, it's Red eTap AXS, and that's AXS. And it just comes down to a simple fact that all the components can be connected together using Bluetooth. There's now an app which allows you to do many things. You can now personalise the group set to meet your requirements, as this bike demonstrates, with 1x red rear mech and a wide range cassette and a dropper post. So wherever you see the AXS logo, you can now connect that component to the rest of your group set. And you can do this all through the app. And in the app, you can do many things. You can customize the way the shifter button works, for example, get maintenance alerts on chain wear and how many shifts you've done, battery life, and many other things as well. So it's all about personalizing the group set, customizing it to meet your demands and your requirements, and to provide much more customization and flexibility with how you set the group set up on your bike, whether you have a gravel bike like this one here or a tarmac I showed you earlier. The really exciting thing about AXS is the fact that you can now mix and match across categories. So here's a really good example of how you can mix and match the new SRAM Red eTap AXS group set. We have a very lovely 3T Exploro Aero gravel frame set, and it's equipped with a hybrid of components. So up front, it's a drop bar with red road shifters, hydraulic disc brakes, and a 1x chain set with the integrated power meter. But we move our attention to the back, we find mountain bike components. So we have a new Eagle eTap rear mech with a clutch mechanism for reducing the chain slap, and a massive, huge 1050 cassette. So you have all the range you want from the mountain bike components with the drop bar shifters up front. So a really integrated mix and match approach, and it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video. It allows you to personalize the customized group set to whatever requirements you have, and this bike really shows where cycling is deviating from the previous 100 years of road racing that's gone before it, with a bike that is super capable and versatile and can do anything and everything And you're not limited by conventional traditional group sets because you can tune it to however you want, with a small single ring at the front, wide range cassette on the back, less things to go wrong, and you've got the drop bar shifters as well. So yeah, you can mix and match Red eTap to your heart's desire. Let's start with a cassette, and we now see a tiny 10-tooth sprocket. That's enabled by the use of SRAM's own XDR driver. So you can't fit this cassette onto a regular Shimano cassette body. You have to use their own XDR driver. This smaller sprocket has allowed SRAM to decrease the chainring ratios. So the whole group set is smaller by about 10%, which means less weight. A simple way to get your head around the change is the fact that SRAM has decreased the range at the front with smaller chain sets, but increased the cassette range. What it means is less front shifting, so more time in the big ring, and you're doing more shifting at the back. The three cassette options include a 1026, a 1028 and a 1033, and the three chain set combinations are a 5037, 4835 and a 4633. So it is a radical redesign of group sets, and it steps away from the conventional traditional group sets we're used to, so compact, subcompact and doubles, and cassettes starting with an 11 tooth at the back. So you've got a smaller chain set and a cassette starting with a 10 tooth, but the maths don't lie. According to SRAM, the new group sets provide a wider range than any comparable conventional group set. So you have lower gears for easier climbs, and you have higher gears for when you're smashing along in a chain gang or sprinting for the finish line. So a wider range is a really good thing because there's more chance of you having the right gear for every situation you might find yourself in. The other really important thing to talk about is the fact that not only do you have a wider range, but you also have a smoother progression on the cassette. So compared to conventional group sets, you have an increased number of one-tooth jumps. So up to 7 sprockets that provide a one-tooth increment compared to any conventional group set. And that means you're going to be in the right gear, the right cadence at all times, and less jumps, less gaps from one sprocket to the next. And that's a good thing if you are really fussy about your cadence. The rear mech has a fluid damper called the Orbit chain management. It offers the same benefits as a clutch mechanism, but it's totally sealed, you never need to service it, and it's also speed sensitive. So that means when you're riding over a really rough road, say cobblestones, there's more tension on the chain, so less likely to pop your chain off the chainring. But when you ride over smooth roads, there's less tension on it as well, so the shifting performance is really good and the battery life is preserved. Let's move our attention to the chain set, which as you can see has a totally new appearance. What it's done is maintain the same 13-tooth jump from the big ring to the little ring. That ensures they can provide the best shifting performance, ensure that shifting performance is really sharp and fast and accurate with that smaller 13-tooth jump. The power meter is now integrated into the big ring, so it's actually part of the big ring. You can't take it out, it's part of the big ring. That increases the stiffness and lowers the weight. They say about 30 grams over the previous setup, but it does mean when the chainring wears out, you have to replace a whole lot. But SRAM says the durability, the improved durability of the new chainring means that it's going to last 5+ years. Of course, there are many variables, weather, number of miles you ride, but they say the durability is so good that you're not going to be replacing it that often at all. So that is an interesting one that SRAM says they did agonise over a long time whether that should be integrated into it, but they say the benefits, performance benefits are such that they couldn't not do it. So you've got extra stiffness, lower weight, and it looks pretty cool as well, doesn't it? What do you think? Now back to this 10-tooth sprocket, and you might be thinking, well, it can't be very efficient having such a small sprocket with a chain tightly wrapped around it. But SRAM says it tested the efficiency of the drivetrain comparing the 10 to 11, and it said the differences are tiny. Any efficiency losses are so small that they're almost not worth worrying about. But I like to see some independent testing comparing this drivetrain to a conventional drivetrain just to see where the efficiency compares. So that's a quick overview of the key tech points, the standout points of the brand new SRAM Red eTap AXS group set. There's quite a lot to get your head around, I know. It is a radical reinterpretation of group sets. You've got these smaller chain sets, you've got this new cassette with a 10-tooth sprocket, a funky looking chain, and you've also got this exciting ability to mix and match components from mountain bike and road to build a hybrid bike of mountain bike at the back and a road at the front, and throw in a dropper post as well. So basically letting you customize and personalize the group set onto any bike. And we're seeing, especially the gravel and endurance sectors, becoming really exciting in terms of really custom builds, taking a bit of mountain bike and a bit of road and adding it together. And what the new Red eTap AXS group set allows you to do is just do that much more easily as well, and to do it all seamlessly with the app to control every aspect of it. A lot to get your head around. I had a chat with some of the engineers behind the new GROUPSET to get a bit more detail and to try and get some explanations for some of the decisions behind the new CHAINSET, the 10-tooth sprocket and so on. So let's hear from some of those guys right now.
The main objective is to provide more useful gearing that's easier to access, right? So that's mechanically, and most of the innovations in the gearing come from the mechanical side, but that's a great complement to the eTap shift logic that we've already implemented, making shifting simpler. Do that with the gearing as well. Yeah, we wanted to make a more useful and easier to use gear set, we want to provide the right ranges for the market, and those are pretty well established by what some market survey, just spec counts, can tell you what gear ranges are popular, what people are using, and so we want to make sure we hit those targets, and in every case expand a little bit. We give a little bit more range because people want more range out of a single drivetrain, and provide better gear steps. Some of that's pretty straightforward, and providing more range, you just make a greater difference between the smallest and biggest cogs or the smallest and biggest chainrings, providing better steps. There's a bit more to that. We've added a cog. There's one more cog back there, which is going to help enormously. But it's also a matter of where you put those steps, and there's a bit more than arithmetic to that, where the right steps should be. So we think we've landed on gearing that is really easy to use and it feels right. The biggest departure from what all the gearing on the market does today, I think, is really in the chain rings. We've added a cog, we've added a 10-tooth. Adding a cog gives you another step. That's going to help a lot. Starting with a 10-tooth allows you to keep everything smaller, which is huge for keeping weight down, reducing cost, and reducing system complexity. But as far as the usefulness to the rider, changing the chain ring sizes, the delta between the chain rings is, I think, the biggest difference. Of the drivetrains on the market today are virtually all of them rely on a 16-tooth jump, with the exception of cyclocross 2x, right? And that's 5236, 5034, the emerging subcompacts, and 4832, 4630, and it's smart because the riders want range, so you maximize the range that a front derailleur can handle, which is 16 teeth at this point, right? However, the problem with that is that I think that 16-tooth jump is kind of, maybe overstating it, but it's a catastrophic event compared to every other shift you make on the bike. It's 5 times worse, right? It is an enormous gear ratio jump. If you think about it, it changes the gear ratio by up to a third in one shift. So we wanted to narrow that gap in the front, so the front shift is less catastrophic. So narrowing the range of the front and put that range at the rear, and that does a bunch of things that makes the drivetrain much easier to use. So when you have more range at the rear, you can stay on the same chainring for longer. You execute fewer front shifts. When you do execute a front shift, instead of shifting 16 teeth, you're shifting 13 teeth. That's a difference of about 20%. That translates to 20% better quality of shift, but more importantly, that's 20% reduction in the amount of biomechanical adaptation you have to make to get back to the right cadence. And or simply, it's one less cog to recover at the rear. I don't, it may sound esoteric, but I think that stuff is really huge. That if you're shifting less in the front, rider's making fewer decisions. I think a front shift is a real conscious decision to prepare for it, execute it, and recover from it. A rear shift you don't really think about. So it's keeping it simpler for the rider. And then when you do execute a front shift, your recovery is actually a little simpler. So, on one hand, I think that's a big accomplishment for the rider to have just a simpler ride, But for a lot of your readership, I really think that I know it translates to measurable performance enhancement. In rolling terrain, the rider who's not making a front shift and still keeping in a good cadence is at a huge advantage. You could do that with the range and but especially making the range bigger at the rear, then you just have bigger. You lose some of the smooth jumps, and we want to preserve. We want to provide. We know people like having. We know that the drivetrains that are on the bikes that we're after, and the sophisticated customers who are purchasing this level of product. They're sensitive to big gear jumps, and a lot of your readership, will talk about what we call in the U.S. corn cobs, right? Having all those jumps right together, and a lot of riders like that. We want to, and for good reason. It's comfortable. The smaller jumps are comfortable. I'm a big fan of One By, and I was product manager for all of our road One By development, so I'm a big proponent of One By. And One By has made equipment that is going on some of the most exciting, has equipped some of the most exciting bikes. It's created some, it's not be highfalutin to say it's created something. It's allowing people to ride the bikes that the way they want to, and that's so rewarding, right? But there are limitations. There's a lot of people that don't want. A lot of your readership doesn't want One By, right? Because the jumps are too big. And I'm not the only guy at SRAM, and there's we're an organization that wants to provide the right gearing for everyone. So the 2x drivetrains are the right thing for the majority of riders. They've told us that clearly. So in this development, we really, honestly, we have invested our resources in optimizing all of our choices for 2x drivetrains. And it has resulted in some improvements in our One By offering, especially for cyclocross, which is a pretty narrow. It's a narrow range, and it's a narrow. We're doing good, thanks. And it's a narrow customer base, right? But for cyclocross race, we've got way better gearing now. And we've got we've got a cassette that with an up to 330% range. Which in an 11.2 start, that's equivalent to, it's a little bit bigger range than an 11.36, which is a great cassette for a lot of regional bike builds, time trial race bike builds. When I say regional, like a Midwestern or South Florida gravel rider. So there's some. We have got vast improvements in 2x drivetrains with some great One By options. But here's the thing that's so gratifying to a One By guy like me, right? Is that what we've developed here, though, is answering the needs of range and steps that everybody wants. and we didn't kill the front derailleur, but you have to use it less often, and when you do, it's easier to do.
I mean, as far as one-by solutions, like JP mentioned, the 1033 is analogous to the 1136 that we have today.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little bit wider range.
Yeah.
That for that one-by customer who was using that cassette, that meets that need. And then when paired with an Eagle rear drivetrain, the user who was running 1042 one-by before, well, you get that with Eagle, and you get another cog that's 50, so it's essentially the same thing. So those two scenarios are ultimately covered in the AXS.
And that creates a great, gravel bike that goes anywhere, and yeah, those bikes are just super fun to ride. So. Yeah, 15's better than 14 as long as it fits in the bike and works, right? But so there's somewhere that if you can add a cog or more than one cog, that might be better. And that's not we haven't figured it out yet.
So in our own testing, it's actually it's very small. So it's 0.6% difference going from the 11 tooth to the 10 tooth. So the 11 in the 11th gear position to the 10 in the 12th gear position. We only measured a 0.6% efficiency difference between those two cogs. And then when we actually ran the comparison to our 11-speed drivetrain with the 11 tooth in the 11th gear position, our 10 tooth on the Red actually was like 0.2% better efficiency in the two different tests. So ultimately that means it's on par. And if you look across all the gears, it's within 0.1% to 0.2% in our testing if you compare gear to gear. So it's almost like not worth considering for the most part, given all the other advantages you get with the gearing that JP described. Less front shifting, staying in the big ring longer. So I think all those add up to a benefit. You're only losing a couple teeth on an already pretty large chainring. And if you look at efficiency testing, there's a lot of studies published on the web over the years, that some of which are pretty decent. It really only comes into play where you start to see measurable differences when you get to the smaller cogs, right? So if you're taking an already large chainring and only pulling a couple teeth off it's so small. And I understand diminishing returns and how there's a big obsession with that stuff, but you have to balance that against the benefit, again, that JP outlined previously, right? A 1/10 or 0.2% on average across your entire gearing range, versus, hey, I didn't have to make a couple front shifts in that race. That could easily make up that time you saw.
A worn chainring set requires a replacement of the power meter as well. We have improved the durability of the chainring set and the chain. And in fact, the chainring set durability largely comes from the improved durability of the chain. And I'm going to quickly run out of runway, and I'm going to hand it over to...
Yeah, so, starting with the chain, we implemented our hard chrome plating process that we apply to the new Red chain, to the inner links, the rollers, and the pins, which is an upgrade over the old Red 22 chain. So that significantly increases the wear performance of the chain itself. So obviously, the longer the chain wears, the less wear it's going to induce on the rings and the cogs. So that's a big improvement there, and that's verified both in our laboratory testing and we've done some long-term studies in the field. The other subtle things we did in the chain that help the interaction between the chain and the teeth on the chain ring. This is something we learned somewhere between 11-speed Mountain XX1 and Eagle. There's some design features on the inside face surfaces of the chain links that we've improved those and adopted what we adopted for Eagle, and that significantly increases the wear, reduces the wear between the interlink plates and the side of the teeth on the chainring. So that reduces a lot of visible wear, that reduces a lot of actual functional wear, and again, that's verified in our testing in the labs, and also a bit of field testing too. So it was, obviously a concern when we made that design decision, that specification decision to integrate the power meter, right? We deliberated over that for a long time. But we had a lot of knowledge and information in our pocket to apply to the new Red Group O to actually solve those problems. And we feel that the benefits of that integrated power meter, it's an incredibly lightweight package for what it delivers, right? Compared to any other power meter you get today. It's the shifting's awesome because the structure's really stiff, and you get power meter functionality like your zero offset. It's like it's the same almost every time you go out for a ride. It's like day to day. It's like within a couple clicks. At the end of the ride, how satisfying it is when you want to check that calibration.
Yeah.
Like it was 100 before the ride. It's just like
You look at him. You do that?
Well, as a test rider, I have to do that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Plus, it's
Test
so
rider, I
nice.
should do that.
It's like
Yeah,
it's like I said before. It's like, hey, it's only one count off.
Yes.
Because it's sometimes like 15 off because the temperature's changed since you started in the morning by quite a bit, right? But these are really, really, really consistent.
It's a well-developed, well-established damper, and for we have well-established friction dampers known as clutches, right? Through our mountain bike products, which we brought over to road, but we had some packaging concerns with fitting that into the road.
So that size and
the size combined with the motor, it just and for especially for a road product, we want to minimize the package, aesthetically for sure, and minimize the weight, and have a simple package. So this really fit the bill, and it does. In fact, it's got. It is lighter, it's smaller, and it reduces complexity in a way in that it gets rid of one of the features I really like on some of our products. With our clutches or friction dampers, you're required to use a cage lock, which is a kind of nice thing, but it comes at the expense of size, weight, cost, complexity. So because a fluid damper doesn't have a lot of resistance for a slow movement, you can change the rear wheel without having.
So there'd be a shifter and hood development team that crossed over into the brake side. There'd be a front derailleur team, a crank team, a chain, cassette, and rear derailleur, and the app. So I think there's 7 unique teams for this development, and then each one of those would have a team leader, sort of managing the schedule, making sure that we're generally going in the right direction with the decisions, and they'll escalate those to the product managers and myself as we need to figure things out. And then there'd be a couple of engineers on each one of those teams, a test engineer. You expand it out, easily 100 core team members, and then an additional 150 sort of support staff that work on other projects as well, right? A lot of this did go easier. This is our second full eTap group. Red eTap was started some 10 years ago in terms of pre-development. So it started in advanced development with a really small, nimble team of really talented engineers, and they'll make a lot of mistakes really quickly and start to prove things out. And this time we had a chance to do a lot more, which is why we were able to take on the gearing, the chain, and all of that. Some of the brake stuff carries over more from the previous generation, But you know, cog development is really challenging, particularly on the cassettes to make and the front chainrings to make these things shift as well as they do. But you know, for sure there were a lot of challenges, but it went a lot smoother than the first generation. You know, we were able to go quicker, and as we get more sophisticated, I hope we can go quicker still. You know, it's not necessarily to push out the next new thing even quicker, but rather spend more time on it, make sure we can make better advances in the bike so it's more fun to ride. We're the One Bike company. Yeah, we've had tremendous success with One Bike, you know, particularly on mountain. And I think we legitimized it and we made it work right there. We solved a lot of more problems on mountain bike with One Bike than you do with road. When you take the rear mech off on road, you don't suddenly free up the design space for kinematics and suspension and wheel clearance. And when we look at what the marketplace is buying, even on gravel bikes, it's predominantly spec'd with 2x. And we're a component supplier, so if that's what customers in that segment want, we'd be foolish not to offer it to them. We'll continue to push the boundaries on gearing, and some of that will include 1x, because we think there's more that can be done there. But I'm not sure that all of the road market is ready for it yet.
So thanks to the guys at SRAM there for answering my questions. Now, I reckon you guys have probably got some questions. You've probably got quite a few questions, in fact, so put them in the comment section below. I should be getting my hands on a GROUPSET on a bike to test soon, so watch out for a full review of the GROUPSET once I get back home to the UK. Talking of which, I've got a plane to catch, so it's time for me to head off. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. I hope it was useful and interesting to you, and show me how much by hitting that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel as well if you haven't already. We've got loads of videos of first looks and reviews coming along in 2019. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the fun. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all again next time.